Hi, everybody. I don't know if you, how many people are here or who can hear and see me, but welcome. Give it a couple of minutes, a few seconds for people to kind of start joining in. Hi, everybody. My name is Carmone Macfarlane, and I'm with the Phoenix Brewing Company in Mansfield, Ohio. And this is about my 7th year in the craft beer industry. I'm the Director of Social Engagement, or I guess some people would say the Chief Marketing Officer. And what I handle is the creative, the marketing, and the education programs. Also, merchandise, website, social media, out-of-house events, and communications. I've been a member of the Pink Boot Society since 2016. I'm the founder of the Jane Doe's Craft Beer Consortium in Mansfield, Ohio, for our local women's group for craft beer education, and studying to become a certified Cicerone. My craft beer journey started almost 30 years ago with my first Honey Brown and Killian's, which I think is kind of normal for a lot of people. Before I jumped into the craft beer industry, and actually before I get into this, I've got about 3 minutes to let people keep kind of joining in. I'm going to talk a little bit about my first editorial calendar and how that started and where it came from. So if you need to go to the restroom and you don't want to hear that part, you just want to wait for the meat and potatoes, that's fine too. I was in education for 20 years before I got into craft beer. And the thing about it is that marketing and education is just called advocacy because it's technically nonprofit. I did a lot of advocacy because I taught visual arts. I needed our program to be really important to our community, to our district, and to our Board of Education. And my district absolutely loves to be able to brag about their employees and their staff members and what they're doing out and about in the community. My high school was one that had 3 PhD individuals and multiple PhD candidates. So to give you an idea about the kind of things that they expected out of the classroom, advocacy was at the top of their list. I worked with our state education organizations on committees and in leadership for over 14 years. I talked to legislators about the importance of the arts, served as a writer for the Ohio state standards, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I did a great job at that. But what I wasn't doing a great job of was advocating and promoting my classroom. Education, even though it's nonprofit, is actually a really big business. And my overall program was starting to hurt a little bit. My advanced courses weren't getting the kind of seat sizes that I needed. So my district, being a big business, would see a class of 27 intro students or a class of 15 advanced kids, and they're going to pick the one where they're going to get the most bang for their buck. So I had to figure out a way to create more interest in my classroom. So I went down to the guidance office and I asked them a whole bunch of questions, and I came back with a lot of dates. Now, this was in May. And one of the things about May is that kids have already picked their classes for the next school year. So I pulled out a calendar. I actually just printed one off from calendarpedia.com. And I'm in for the next school year, November, that I had to rewrite the course descriptions and that it had to be submitted by the end of the month. That way it could be presented to the board in December, printed in January, and in the hands of the kids by February of the next year when they started to actually plan for their courses. And I finished that and I had my calendars all together, and I sat down one day and I looked at them and I noticed that my curriculum and this calendar, one of the big gaps that I had and one of the problems was that I was teaching the subject matter after the kids were signing up for courses. So I sat back down with that same calendar and I edited my curriculum and I adjusted every bit of it so that I was having students coming in at or learning about those things before they were scheduling. And to kind of make the long story short, after I had combined my calendar with the curriculum, I created a small marketing program over the summer, and I wound up changing the program over the course of 3 years to where I lost some of my intro courses as opposed to my advanced courses. When I left education and came into craft beer, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I did was keep that same kind of a calendar concept. I didn't know it was called an editorial calendar. I didn't know that it was something that other businesses or other areas used, like publishing. I just knew that it really made my life a whole lot easier. So I began making sure that I was repeating it with craft beer. And I guess at this point, I guess some of you might say, well, do I really need an editorial calendar? If you've ever asked yourself, Is there, oh, there was a 5K in town this weekend, or there was a big festival and you didn't know about it. If you say, oh, I wish I knew something sooner, it's too late to organize something, or I didn't know about that beer holiday, or if you've ever felt like you could have done better if you had more of a heads up, if you never know what you need to post, or that you feel like you're reactive in your planning as opposed to proactive, then you need an editorial content, or an editorial calendar. An editorial calendar is simply just a way to plan, organize, and manage your information. It's more of an internal document or an outline for the marketing, for your social media, for your brewers, for your entire organization. It's basically a roadmap or a blueprint for your content on social media and your processes in-house. It's going to help you plan your social media in advance. It's going to help you to identify gaps in posts and social media, just in general. It's going to help you to collaborate in other areas of your brewery, and it's going to help you to map out your marketing program and your campaigns and your content just so that you can maximize their effectiveness. Now, you may have heard of an editorial versus kind of content calendar, and they kind of go hand in hand. An editorial is just the outline, and we'll say the content's kind of the nuts and bolts or all of the meat of that program. They're kind of the day-to-day things, the actual posts, the individual small pieces. And, they can kind of be merged together, or they can be completely separate depending upon what you really, really feel comfortable with. But creating your own craft beer editorial calendar is incredibly easy to do. It just takes a little bit of time. It takes about an hour to set up the entire outline for a full year. And mind you, that's just for the information, but you do have to maintain it over the course of the year as well. So the first thing that you want to do is gather some supplies. Give me 1 second. I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint. So you're going to want to gather like a calendar or a planner of some kind. Excuse me. Sorry about this. That's my first time using StreamYard. I'm working on it. You're going to want to gather your supplies. You need a calendar or a planner of some kind. You can get a free calendar at calendarpedia.com. You can go to Google, use a Google Calendar, use iCalendar, use a paper planner. I love the At a Glance, the Passion Planners, or the Blue Skies. And you're going to need some pens, pencils, and some Post-its. You want to gather your information. Now, this is the part that's going to be a little bit time consuming and take some effort, and it's before you actually start putting anything down on paper. You're going to want to gather your holidays that are important. The federal, your important holidays, your craft beer. You need your production schedule, in-house events, out-of-house events, on-premise or off-premise events, community events, any marketing campaigns, sales or promotions, specialty releases, competitions that you might be involved in, any charity initiatives that you have, some daily holidays that fit in with your business, sports events, live music, and food trucks. And trying to find all of that information can sometimes be a little bit harder. So I'm going to go over where you can find a lot of that information at, especially if you've never done this before. Your holidays, that's a pretty easy one. They're online. You can find them on all kinds of beer blogs about what the craft beer holidays are. The handout, I've got a handout that I'll be putting on our website that I'll give you the address to later. Your production schedule, ask your production or your sales team for that information. If they're not doing a full year, ask them for if they have a quarterly plan or a monthly plan or just what's coming up. And there are some things that you already know about and you can plan ahead for example, like Christmas ales or winter warmers, pumpkin ales, and some of those niche beers like smoked Rausch beers and that kind of stuff. Those are things that you can kind of take a look at and say, I know those beers are coming up. I know those beers are definitely going to be on the schedule, and you can start planning out some of your materials ahead of time. Just put them, in the January section or whatever section of them, whatever month it's coming out. We'll talk about that in a minute. Your in-house and your out-of-house events, things that are on-premise or off-premise, depending upon what you like to say. Ask the owners, ask your taproom managers, check with your state guilds, look for beer organizations, go to Google search, ask your sales teams. Do they have tap takeovers? Are you planning anything in-house? Just kind of find all of those things you can. And you may not have a full year, but get what you can that's closest to the date and just kind of hang on to that for a little bit. You're going to want to gather up your marketing campaigns, sales and promotions, your specialty releases, any charity initiatives, the places that you're advertising to. That's a great way to find some of your information. So if you have someone who is interviewing you on a blog, if you're in print, if you're on radio, having that information to kind of connect with them. I skipped community events. I'm so sorry. Go into your community events. Check out with your local Convention and Visitors Bureau. Check with your local television stations. Check with your community organizations that you're already working with and find out what their schedules are. Most of those places are going to be planning out for almost a full year in advance. Your travel brochures or your state travel websites, they have information 12 to even 18 months in advance that you can find some things that you can tie into your marketing and add to your editorial calendar. For example, in our area, we have something called the Prairie Peddler, which is a local event in the fall with tons of different vendors that come in, and it draws a huge crowd, between 5,000 to 10,000 people a day. You can use that to kind of say, hey, I need to kind of tailor some marketing or some of my editorial stuff towards that to try to attract that crowd. Competitions, any competitions that you are in, national, state, local, things like the World Beer Cup, GABF, the World Beer Awards. Keep a file with all of that information from year to year, and then just kind of pull it out and look for what those dates are year to year that you can add back into your editorial calendar. The reason why that's important is that, let's say you have a competition that you want to do, or you know that you've entered beers in that competition. You want to take pictures of the beers that are going to that competition ahead of time, so that if you win something, you don't have to try to find a can, find a bottle, find a label, and take a picture. You want to be able to have an announcement ready to go just in case. And if it doesn't win, then you still have some great stuff that you can use for different content areas or to promote the beer next year. I think I missed a slide here. Hang on. Any charity initiatives that you have that are in-house, that are out-of-house, find the information that you need for that, kind of tap into their websites and save that information for your marketing campaigns and for your calendar. For example, I know that in April every year, we're going to do a specific drive with the domestic violence shelter. So I know that I'm going to be advertising for that ahead of time. I know that I'm going to be looking for donations. I know that in November every year, I'm going to be doing a coat drive with our homeless shelter. So just go ahead and toss that into your editorial calendar. Doesn't have to have a date. It can just be a month. Daily holidays, you can search on Google with daily holidays, social media holidays, holiday.com. Sports events, what's going on with your local sports events? Do you have, are you in Cleveland? Are you in Cincinnati? Can you use either of those things, like the Cincinnati Bengals or the Cleveland Indians or the Cleveland Browns? Can you use any of those kinds of things to fill in your calendar with things that you can kind of advertise with or play off of? And once you have all of that information together, it gets really easy to kind of do the next couple of steps. The first thing you do is you map it out. Excuse me. Even if you're using a digital calendar or a digital planner, go ahead and just map it out on paper and pencil first. Print off a pre-calendar from calendarpedia.com. You can get it by the month, you can get it by the year, and start mapping some things out. If you have 5 or 6 events in a 2-week period, you're going to want to maybe spread those out. If you have a candy and beer tasting and you also have a special live music piece, you might want to spread that out a little bit. And you'll find that with your editorial calendar as you're starting to map some of these things out. Write it in pencil first in case it changes or it needs an edit. And then just go ahead and add it to your digital calendar after you've kind of mapped it out and you know that you're not going to have huge chunks that are overlapped. Start with the full year. Start with your annual holidays. Start with your beer production calendar. Start with your in-house events. Pull your community events. Pull your marketing campaigns, any competitions, and just map those out for each month. If you have all of that information already gathered, it won't take you more than 30 or 40 minutes to really just kind of plop these bigger pieces in so that you can kind of move into the quarterly and monthly information as you go. put a day on your calendar to kind of remind you to update those things each quarter and each month, and say, hey, just my reminder, take a look and see, are there any updates for sports, local events, beers, that kind of stuff. If there's any, tap takeovers or those kinds of items that are coming in that you're going to be participating in, or beer festivals, if they ever come back, which would be nice, those are a nice thing to kind of tie into. Once you have it all started, ask other people, share it out on a digital calendar, and ask other people to help you add things in. Ask your brewers or your production team to make sure that they're implementing those different kind of beer releases every single week or every single month or whenever they're coming out, and have them put in the description a little bit about the beers so that you have more information. If you've got another department like your taproom manager that knows that there's an event coming up or a live music group, have them add those to the calendar as well, so that you can access those to kind of put them out on social media and add them into the overall calendar so that everybody has access to it. Some of the tools that can make it easier, some of the tools that can make it a little bit easier for you, Google Calendar and iCalendar are great because everybody can access it. Just make sure that everybody has access to it or has been included with an invitation link. Spreadsheets that everybody has access to. Asana and Trello are a great way to organize your repeating tasks. If you have print items that have to go out every month, if you've got repeating events, it's great to put those in there and then repeat them for each year. If you're doing, something every month, specialty tappings, it's kind of nice to kind of get all of your information in one area, or use, a spreadsheet to also do that same kind of thing where you have everything in one area with accessibility. Whiteboards, Post-its, those are things that are really nice if you're doing group meetings and you have people coming in and want to add to it. If it's just you, whiteboard's nice because you can erase and add to it as much as you want. Some tips: save your planners from year to year. Autofill your Google Calendar or your iCalendar by just, once you put an event in, if you know that that's going to repopulate again, say in December, it's the same thing. Like, it's going to repopulate the next December, the same beer. You're releasing your holiday beer December 1st, or in our case, we release the Krampus Candy, which is a white stout. We release it every year around Krampus night, which is December 5th. This year it's releasing December 2nd in-house. Last year it was December 5th. We just repopulate that based on specific days of the week. You can schedule those out for years to repeat with Google, and I believe you can with iCalendar as well. Make friends with your local Convention and Visitors Bureau. Ask them for help. Ask them for questions. Ask them to give you a heads up when events are coming in town. Look 2 to 3 months ahead or 5 to 6 months ahead. Close off any distractions that you have when you're working on this, so that you're not, getting off task or off track. So if there's, any questions, go ahead and shoot me a message and let me know. It should be posted somewhere else to see later. Any questions? Just to let you know, if you go to phoenixbrewing.com/EC, EC is an editorial calendar, I'll have items posted on there later with an example of an actual editorial calendar and a little bit about the slideshow. So if you want to see that without all the choppiness that I had, or if you have any questions, it'll also have my email address, which is red@phoenixbrewing.com. Feel free to reach out to me. And I'll give it a second and see if there's any questions. Any questions at all? I have a question from Edmundo Tome. Would you consider basing the editorial calendar on the production calendar or the other way around? I would say that they're going to complement each other. There are some things you can do. For example, International Stout Day is coming up in November. If your production staff knows ahead of time that date is coming up, for example, and they really want to have a specific stout out, you can ask them if they can kind of arrange their release date around the calendar and kind of work in tandem. I would say, your production staff has a huge job already trying to figure out what beers are coming out when, especially if they're doing a full year example. So, I wouldn't ask them too many times to kind of base them off of, or change their schedule based on that. But it doesn't hurt to see if they can kind of work with you on some of those releases. IPA Day is always in August. Stout Day is always in November. And I believe Bach month is March. So, those are always dates that you can always try to have targets for specific styles. But, it really just kind of depends upon the relationship you have with your production staff as well. Did that answer it maybe? We've already started, in our situation, we've already started our production schedule for next year. I know that they're cutting several beers because we're starting to can. So I know that we're going to be moving some of the editorial content out, some things that we normally would promote off of that regular rotation. But they just haven't finalized that schedule yet. Any other questions? You're welcome. Again, if you go to phoenixbrewing.com/EC, I'll have some stuff put up there later today for you that'll be active, should be active after 5 p.m. So if you want to take a peek at any of those items, you're more than welcome to. They'll be around for at least a month on the website, and it is a hidden page. So again, phoenixbrewing.com/EC. Thanks for kind of hanging out with me for a little bit as I babbled. Any other questions? Okay, have a great day, guys. Thank you.